In this episode of The Rook, I wanted to talk about entitlement and the real trickle-down effect that I see in our modern Western society. And I really feel like Yaweh is the embodiment of that, of entitlement and that trickle-down effect, because it works for people. And a lot of people, and this isn't to classify anybody who follows an Abrahamic religion in this sense that they're all entitled. That's not what I'm trying to do. I'm going to have to clarify every little thing that I say, though, since we're in that point in 1984 that we have to. But in all honesty, there is a spectrum of Christianity and Judaism, everything, where a group of people act enlightened and entitled. They act because they believe in God and the power of Jesus. They use and weaponize that against people, and they believe that they are above you in certain ways. We see this in politics. We absolutely see this with the oligarchs that are running this globe, which is a small handful of people. It's like 180 people are calling the shots for everything, and everything you see in my podcast, they own it. You know, they've profited it from it. And I've gotten it secondhand, they have too. The Catholic Church owns all of that, and it's not for the people. And this is what I wanted to get on here and talk about. Like, this is why we need to do this podcast. It's that sort of shit too, and how spirituality connects. But with entitlement, we see that with our government. These people that aren't even government officials, that just have business interests, feel entitled to our health and to the decisions we make and to what criteria we need to take in order to do those things. And we've completely lost the plot. And then that trickles down to people like Karens. We see a lot of Karens acting fucking entitled because some poor bastard barista that's not wanting that job at Starbucks, that's getting paid minimum wage because he's probably just trying to get through school or support his fucking parents or whatever the case is, trying to become independent because maybe his parents are toxic. He doesn't need this shit. But because he didn't put 14.5 vanilla bean syrup into her frappuccino, she's gonna flip her shit. And most of these people honestly probably have undiagnosed, mental disorders, or maybe they're on the spectrum of some sort and they don't know it. That's like, I've noticed that in the boomer generation. As a parent of autism, I've studied this so much in a very short amount of time, and I'm so new at this, and I'm trying so hard to be the best I can. I see idiosyncrasies in society from I know I'm always clowning on boomers, but seriously, that generation has a lot of suppression. They're so afraid of being themselves, so they just take it out on people. In terms of that having a parallel to Yaweh, I don't know. I can't say that, but I do feel like in my research so far as a non-scholastic, a pedestrian, theologist, if you will. I'm not even classified to say that, but somebody who studied theology to weaponize it because I was a smartass, and now I'm in this path. I don't see any history stating, what's God's lesson in this? Why is he just at the top and just underdeveloped in those ways? Because he's so reactive and wrathful and unforgiving and proud and a god of war. It's a false god, right? It's not what it's supposed to be. It's not El. It's not the God that we're supposed to know. This is something different. This is something that gained so much power, and the system of it took over. And that's what I believe from my research. You have people with these black cubes all over the world, these obelisks all over the world. You have Abrahamic, religions fighting over the same fucking piece of land for the past, umpteen thousands of years. 6,000 years now, where Solomon's temple was built, they're still fighting over that. Why? There's so many, intricacies, and it's difficult to talk about as a religious person. I'm an anti-Christian. I don't believe in that doctrine. I believe that there are so many great philosophies that people with good hearts and good intentions can take from Abrahamic religions, but I do believe that they're magical systems that keep people in a mental cage because it breeds paranoia. And it's entitlement, and that's just been this sort of, I don't know how to explain it, but now that I'm really getting into the groove of doing this, and it's been better for me to have time to do it, and I've been just resting more and not stressing on it. The signs around me influence what I'm going to talk about, because I've got a whole list of ideas, but entitlement has just been really a highlight in my life because I have a lot of support to make all of this happen. And it's not coming from a place of desperation, like, oh, you got to be the one. It's not that at all. I have these conversations with my family. My husband does it even more so than I do. My kids are super wise. I learn a lot from those two. We're all like that. All of us are like this. So those of you who like listening to me talk, this is my home is like that. And my family supports me because of that. And they say, Mom, you got to go do this. Where, my kids gave me this room to have as an office as a surprise. I started crying. They share a room because they have a room and office. They have a business that they're running. They wanted me to have this. My husband got this table, and he found people, like all these things, and I have so much support. So it's important for me to stay grounded because I'm not entitled. So I still do the predominant, and I did have to learn a lesson in that I can't do it all. I was too proud. I was like, I refuse to let my kids help me with the little ones because I don't want them to be burdened. I refuse to put burden on my husband. And they're all saying, let us help you. And I was terrified so much of entitlement. People become monsters when they become successful or they have so much support and people believing in them. I don't want to ever be like that. So as I've studied and deep dove into the plausibility of becoming entitled, because that's important in my opinion on the left-hand path, and to seek counsel from not only people in your environment if you're lucky to have someone that you trust, but seek counsel from the deities that you may work with. And in my case, it's fallen angels. And I ask that because they're helping me expand. They're helping me through this process. And I want to say non-believers. That sounds very cult-like, so please excuse me for that. But people who don't have a misunderstanding, and the Abrahamic conception of what a daemon is, what a demon is, they think it's just, evil, and they're going to come and eat you. Like, obviously aspects of that energy exist in nature and like metaphysics and stuff, like, because it has to in order for the polar opposite to exist. It's just a reality. But the devil collective doesn't just hand you things. Like, what, in my understanding that I've learned just asking, because I had some real financial hardships after COVID. It was really uncomfortable for us because we're not used to that. We work really hard and we felt entitled to that. I think everybody feels entitled. If you work your ass off, whether it's for somebody else or for yourself, you should have a reasonable living. And right now in Australia, the news isn't reporting it, but people are not doing good right here. The middle class is so fucking gone. It's crazy. They're salting the land. People are making community gardens, and they salted the land not too long ago with that I talked about. The stores are just absurd. They sell like rotten produce to people sometimes for like bullshit prices. It's gross. And everybody's just kind of stuck in it. People are starting to break down. They've got security outside of the store. I told my husband, this shit's going to be like where I grew up in about 5 years. Watch. There's litter everywhere, a little bit of graffiti. I'm like, oh, I smell trouble. Now they're building all of these paper mache pop-up houses and apartments too. I'm like, oh man, this fucking just reminds me of home. I see it happening. So the whole lesson of an entitlement when I deep dove into this was, am I, like, if this becomes successful, which I really feel that success is supposed to be aligned with me, I've just ran away from it. I've ran away from myself. Am I, applicable to becoming like a terrible entitled person? And of course they say, yeah. And we'll show you lessons just in everyday life and in the news or on social media, or just when you go to the store and you see somebody, because that's happening here too. There wasn't a lot of Karens even in California where I didn't see too much like drama when I would go out. In certain parts there would be, and I think it was just normal. Like growing up I saw that, but then like in Sacramento it was pretty cool. Like it was just once in a while, but here it was like never. Like people are so civil here. And I know people in Australia are laughing because there's definitely people that walk around drunk, and it's crazy. They call them bogans here. It's like equivalent to a redneck, and they're just like, how you going? And they start fucking drunk talking you, and you think you're better than me. It's the same shit, different hat, you know what I mean? Different flag, same shit everywhere. Everybody's got their thing, you know? But there was not a lot of drama, but now I'm starting to see that entitlement here because people are breaking down. And that's how this God of War works. I'm seeing it, and they show me, the demons show me this stuff. Like, see, this is how Yahweh operates. And you see it, the sense of entitlement. Look how he is. You are to bow down and worship me. I created everything. I am the fucking, he's like Andy Warhol. You know, like, I'm the artist. It's like, go fuck off. It's so many flaws in your art. You're blinded by it. Like, how many human errors are there? You know, there's so much just error in us. I am error, you know, like, seriously. And but like, there's a denial about that when it's somebody like me who's just a big sloppy mess in life. That's not my job. I didn't do that. My child did that, you know. And it's always Satan's fault, like, because we're all fucked up. It's like it's so crazy to me. But then when somebody does something great with their lives, it's like, all glory be to God. It's like, no. For what? How boring is that? So, you know, expansion was needed. And there isn't even an entitlement with the demons with that, because I've had these conversations and these deep meditations, and I ask these really just weird questions. I'm quite curious. I'm like, how do these systems work? I think everybody's just got to get past. You know what? I take that back. Nobody needs to do shit. That's so fucking entitled of me. In my opinion, though, everybody needs to get past all this frivolous shit. Like, oh, duh, I want more chocolate and money. It's like it's not important. Once you let it go, it comes to you. Then you got lots of chocolate, and you're like, oh, cool, chocolate. You know, and you enjoy it in moderation. And they help you to detach with that. I talked about that. But the entitlement that people have, that's like this aspect of war energy that's breaking us down in society. And I see that's the real trickle-down effect. I see it from the top, from God itself, and then just trickle down to the oligarchs that are using these magical systems. And it's not like woo-woo. People don't understand that. People who think that there's a lot of conspiracy theorists in terms of magic and magical systems that are a bit goofy. But magic is just science's question mark. And there's systems in place and they work. I wouldn't have been doing witchcraft my entire life if it didn't work. It's not a coincidence, because anytime something does backfire, you can justify shit for sure. But there is rhyme and reason, and too many idiosyncrasies line up that you have no control over. That's because there are systems in place. It's elements of psychology we don't understand, elements of science we don't understand, elements of ourselves, because we've been just dumbed down into this entitled, demanding species who wants to just consume, and we do every fucking thing. And I'm sorry, this isn't something that I like to hear, and I think that people like this that I'm about to be like are annoying, because people get very entitled. Like the zero waste community, I won't be a part of it, because I love to do DIYs and I love to make my own soaps, because first of all, I don't really think I can afford to spend $30 on laundry soap twice a week for a family of 6, because that's how much it costs where I am. And it's not reasonable, so I make my own. But in that community, people are so entitled that if somebody like me buys a pair of headphones, oh, you're fucking up the environment. It's like, no, I'm not here consuming a ton of shit. And even if I were, it's really no one's business. It's really up to everybody to start doing small things that are a little bit uncomfortable. And then you'll get to a point where you think, fuck, none of this really matters. How stupid. We need all of these little things. We need all of these little snacks and all of these little trinkets and I'm so that person. I need this ghost pen. I actually fucking do. Like, I was drawing ghosts earlier with my child because my child wanted my attention, and I'm not entitled to just tell everybody to just wait on me so I can work on my stuff. I stopped and we drew ghosts. I'll show you. These are little ghost fairies, and I'm coining that, and they have little feelings, and we were just drawing little ghosts, you know. But in all seriousness, we don't need lots of stuff like this, right? But it's okay to like things like this, but be mindful. Who fucking made this? I'm serious. It sucks, right? But then don't be so toxic about it to where you can't accept and like things. Just be maybe mindful of it. It's hard. It's a really hard complex because this system makes you fight yourself and it makes you become toxic within your own efforts. And I've realized that. And then you become entitled. I've had all of these experiences in the past few years, especially post COVID, have been really, really like awakening to me in many aspects, not just spiritual, oh, I'm meditating more. It's really everything in my life has been coming full circle and it makes sense. And demons help, they have beautiful timing. They have beautiful timing. And my point is we can't be entitled. Entitlement has so many branches and subgenres, and they have their own spectrums. And I feel like the point of me making this video is to say that most of us within our subgenres are becoming entitled and thinking that our way is right. And the problem with that is, I won't even say the problem, the thing that sucks about that is most of that comes from feeling powerless and somebody else being entitled, some system being entitled, or bullies at school and people getting into your head, or an older sibling or something that treated you like shit. Like there's so many issues that so many of us have had to be challenged with. So you see the trickle down effect with entitlement, and you see the source that it comes from. And you know what the thing is I feel, and I hope people feel this is transparent, is I feel detached when I say this sort of stuff. Maybe it's a justification for me to just blame God for everything, but my problem is as a leader, you're supposed to take the heat when you fuck up, and I don't see that. And I don't see why people on his side of the fence aren't seeing that. And if they are, at least be honest and say, yeah, our leader really isn't doing a great job and we got to help him out or something, whatever. Is there a lack of evolvement in there? Because I know that there are so many decent Muslims and so many decent Christians and so many decent, Jewish people. I know people of all of those genres of religion. I've crossed paths with plenty of people. There was a Muslim woman, I'll tell you real quick, when my children and I were, migrating over here to Australia, we were still going back and forth and we were in between countries. And we traveled a lot. And my kids came over and my daughter had to have emergency surgery. She had her appendix went. And we, pretty much the next day after she got here, we went to go get her to the hospital because she woke up and she was like, hey, I'm in a lot of pain. And I'm like, all right, is it food poisoning? I don't know. Waited a bit. It's not. We got her in and her appendix went. And anyways, the traveler's insurance was limited, and my visa restrictions were really screwed up at the time. I was in the process of things. I didn't have Medicare here yet, so I had to pay for that surgery, right? And at least it was still like a lot of money, but it wasn't nearly as much as it is in America. But I wasn't crying about the money. I really wasn't. I was just really tired and stressed out, and I was just like going through a lot of shit. Now my kid's in the hospital, and nobody seems to give a shit, except for my husband and I. Like, I'm just doing everything by myself, and I just had a moment in the waiting room, and I broke down in tears. And this Muslim woman came up to me and she was like, are you okay? Do you need money for I heard them talk. And she was willing to pay like $11,000. Of course I said no. What a stupid sucker I am. No, I'm super serious. But she was literally like, is it the money? I didn't mean to listen, but I heard the nurses here, they were like, we don't know what to do because they're not used to the American system. So they really helped me out, and I had like a low payment plan back, like seriously, because my insurance can't cover it now. Now we're blessed here in Australia, but people that have free healthcare, they don't understand at all, like how it's a fucking human right, to have healthcare. And a lot of Americans I know don't feel that way. They're like, my taxes, it's entitlement. It's like, fuck, what the fuck are we? This is crazy. It's so fucking twisted. And I know I'm kind of ping-ponging, but it's all these lessons of entitlement that I've seen that I've been, just showcased. It's almost like they will flash like these cinematic sort of like moments that you've come across people, and maybe their faces are blurry because you don't remember everybody, but you remember the scenarios and you go, gosh, this is, and you step back and you go, these are really symptoms of this. This is really what it is. And I know I say that a lot, and it's not to just like bypass shit. It's really, I'm seeing it. And it's so many complexities. We're not living how we're supposed to be. This is not what we're supposed to be doing with our lives, is just sitting here and arguing with each other and being like completely unwell. We're supposed to be mentally healthy and just feel good about ourselves no matter what, no matter who, I'm not even getting into that shit. It doesn't, we should not feel entitled to even like judge other people for whatever their weight is or whatever. And I'm not a healthy at every size advocate, sorry. I am feeling way better since starting my journey, and I already had a lot of energy, but middle age hits and it's a big reality. I've never been a healthy at any size. I am a leave the fuck people alone, and why do you even see that? Like that's how I see, and it's like screaming in a soundproof room. It's like, why doesn't anybody else see what I'm seeing here? So, and I'm not like better for it. I'm so fucking like vain in different ways, and I have an ego and I have shit that I gotta balance, but the moral of the story is the entitlement that we have as human beings. But what reflex is that? Because it's kind of weird. The devil kind of feels entitled too, but in not the aspect of the lessons that they teach. In whether it's Lucifer, whether it's Azazel, I've been working heavily with Azazel this past week too because of just breakdowns I've been having. But it's really, outside of that, they do have some entitlement. There is an aspect of there that they, I don't want to say struggle with, but they know exists. Like, yeah, I do feel like they teach that. They teach you to stand your ground. There's all of these complexities, but at least with the Devil Collective, it's understandable. There's still a lack of entitlement to, yeah, we fell and we made this happen, but it was needed. Like they understand the energy I have received having these conversations with Belial is, it was like a response to everything that happened, expansion, and then you realize you can do it, and that is like the first chapter of resilience to me, because God wasn't resilient. God hid behind his kid. The devil doesn't do that. Lucifer is so graceful and so detached from stuff, but not numb, just detached because they're so expanded. Our problems, even the really, really dark ones, are just, they've experienced so much more, but they still sometimes will have a sense of entitlement with that. Like, get the fuck up. It's not that bad, and that can be toxic, but some of us do need it. Some of us who've kind of been conditioned with that need it. I don't believe in being like that as a parent. But I also don't believe, sorry about noise pollution, but I got to keep it going. I can't just not do it because there's planes. We have to keep things going. You got to be gentle, but also with my kids, like what I go through having young adults is, look, I can't do this for you. I got to teach you to make your own medicine, because that's the thing. That's like, I won't get into detail, but I'm a home herbalist. I have an apothecary fridge. We've got an inventory. I do all that stuff. I was sharing stuff on TikTok with that, and I'm going to again now that I have some time, because I've been doing all this since I haven't been filming. It's so much work to film and edit. But anyways, my daughter just wasn't refilling some tincture that's been helping her. And she's been having some struggles, and I'm like, hey man, I've noticed that, it's been a month. I know how much 15 mil will go if you take a dose every day, because I do that. And she just was like, oh, I didn't refill it, just teenager kind of stuff. And I told her, I said, well, I'm kind of wondering if you're expecting me to just have an alarm set on my phone and just show up on a little silver tray. And I'm always a smart ass, and they laugh, with your medicine going, your dosage for the month is ready, my dear, and I will go make another batch. And that's that. And she was she thinks, see, I do that stuff, but not in a condescending way to put them down, and like I level with them. And because there's no, why are you going to do that? But she started to laugh and think, yeah, and I tell her, what do you think needs to be done. She's like, I really think that I need to stop just depending on you, because I like watching you do all this stuff, and I think that I just like doing the fun part, like picking the herbs, and I go over stuff with my kids. I teach them. I'm up. I just don't have like a freaking marker board, but I pace around. I teach them. They have journals. So that's what we do. That's what I've been doing for years. I'm not fucking relying on the system and their bullshit to teach them what they can choose what gender they are by the time they're 4. I'm not one of those parents. I'm not that fucking liberal. Sorry. Like, I'm very liberal, but the point is she learned a lesson of, I didn't want to do the unfun part, cleaning the bottles and doing all this. But then when you change your mindset a little bit, it can be fun. We can do stuff together, and I can teach you how to bottle this up. She likes to do labels for all the things. We need labels in our house for everything. I label everything because we make a lot of stuff, and I save a lot of stuff, and I make a lot of, you guys already see. So everything has a label. Just a label, date, who made it, just like you do in the restaurant world, and I do all that. But now she likes to do it. So she learned a lesson that she was creating her own blockages, because she just decided she didn't want to do anything, and then she kind of felt in a way entitled, like, well, I'm just going to expect everybody else to do it because maybe they like to do it. And I was like, I don't like doing this shit. I like taking care of my family, but I don't like doing all the shit that so she's learning how to fish, and it was cool. You step back and let them learn that. So it was all these little, alignments in my life that entitlement has been standing out to me. And I think that's healthy parenting too, by the way. When you're talking with your kids, seriously, step back and let them make their own decisions. If you raise your kids to feel comfortable enough to say, I fucked up, you know how you do that? You do it. I'm going to get off topic right now. It's still related to entitlement. But I just want to point that out. I admit when I screw up. My kids know my failures. They know because they're older now, they know all the tea about my life. They know, all these things. And as a result, anytime they goof up, they're like, and they don't think, oh yeah, I goofed up, Mom, I'm going to do it again. Literally, they stop and they think, because they want to grow. They don't want to be dealing with bullshit. I'm like, why would you? There's no glory in this. Don't listen to people that go, oh yeah, when I was fucking up. Like, you hear that shit. If you hear funny stories from outlaws and all these other things, like, trust me. But you don't want to be a part of that sort of stuff. So they detach and they evaluate themselves. They go, yeah, that's going to cause problems if I keep this pattern up, because I've got goals. Those kids have goals, because I got goals, and I show up for my goals. I'm not entitled to take their life away because my life is a fucking mess. And that's a lesson that I learned too, because I can be a great parent for all the things, like, the only thing that was hard for me when I was a young mom is, like, I just want to be really patient, and that's hard. So I'd give myself timeouts, like, I didn't want to be a yelling parent. I wasn't perfect, but for the most part, I practiced patient parenting, and yelling doesn't help. You don't want to yell. It doesn't help. Once in a while, man. Now it's like maybe once a year. It's maybe. I don't know. It's not even that. Because the kids, when they screw up, they know that there's a lesson in it, and they know that they can call home if they ever do something crazy stupid, and they just don't. They just work. We just work, and we work out together. So I don't know. I know I'm going on about my kids, but I learn lessons through them, and they learn through me, and that's how it should be. It's not me being the dominant. I don't gotta, like, show everybody that I'm in charge. Like, it's not the case. I got to teach them to be in charge. I already know I'm in charge. And that's the entitlement, too, of leadership, I think, that I've learned over the years, because I used to hate being a leader, because I was always shoved into that role, like, shoved into take over, shoved into for everything. Like, literally, when I was struggling with my career as a chef, I was trying to balance out raising and homeschooling 2 kids and having a full-fledged career, because I was getting them out of the system back there in California. It was just wild. It was too stupid. So, and even their charter school was all getting fucked up and crazy, like, all of it. It was really going down, like, in the mid-2000s. Like, 2014, everything started to really look weird to me. Like, it really did. So anyways, when I got them out of the system, and I thought, I'll go back to work part-time. So I go to a restaurant, and I'm good. I know what the fuck I'm doing, and I work really hard, and I've got energy. and they always want me full time, and they'd always just schedule me 6 days a week, and I'm like, I can only work. I made this very clear, like, and it's this entitlement, and you have to learn how to balance that out. Because I would get pushed into this leadership role all the time, like, no, we got to have you on, we got, whatever, for everything, shit that I'm not even like passionate about. So they've taught me leadership isn't just because you don't like it, because Belial doesn't care. He's a king. They don't sit there and wave their fucking balls around about being the king of the underworld. They understand that there's a burden with that. They have a quiet power. They know how to do business. They know how to delegate, and there's systems in place, and I'm learning all this shit. And that when you accept that and you take back your energy, you know what I mean? Seriously, like, I took back my energy from everybody, even my kids, everybody. And now I've got a lot of energy, and I'm able to do all of this shit, but I have support. I'm not doing it on my own. I cannot do it on my own. But the point of this is they teach you to not have that sense of entitlement, whether it will be with leadership, because when leaders have that sense of entitlement, they act like, oh, like God does that. Well, I'm in charge. If you have to do that as a leader, you're not doing a good job, because it's this weird thing. Some of us just have that because we've been in that role. We've had really good leaders as mentors, or at least in survival mode situations, and you pick apart people when you're growing up, and when you start to heal, you go, okay, they have really good attributes of leadership, and I need that, because I'm like really just thrown into a field by myself, and I'm like, fuck, and there's a tumbleweed, and it's like, fuck you, and it goes by, and you're like, dude, there's nothing. I got to do this on my own, so what do I got to do? And you got to be resourceful, and you can use people from your past sometimes when you're doing shadow work as a map, where the levels of leadership that they were good and where they were bad, and the ones that were entitled, the ones that were like telling you, because I've had that shit, they were trying to demand from you, and you just laugh in their faces. I had that from a teacher one time. I had this math teacher, and everybody used to call him Hitler because he looked like Hitler, and he was an asshole, and all of his students were failing. They were getting like a freaking C and under, and I was too, and I deserved it, to be honest, because I didn't care. But he would go off on, and these kids were crying, and he'd be like, that's your problem. I'm like, no, I stood up in class. This was days before the internet had smartphones. And I said, you know what? You're the one that's failing these kids as a leader. I go, you are as strong as your weakest student. Like, seriously, I learned that shit growing up, being in this environment. He was ex-military, and he tried to like stand at attention. And I was like, dude, you really think that this is going to work on me? Like, this doesn't work. And I saw that, those ex-military people, some of them that are broken, they fucking just, they demand that they maintain that power. And in the civilian world, nobody's going to give a shit. That ranking system, that little safety net in the military doesn't exist. And I'm sorry, but that's true. I'm a civilian my entire life. I don't know anything about that other than being on a certain other end of a fucking gun with that sort of shit. Like, I was just a whole different avenue. So when I would see people like that in later adolescence and early adulthood, I would go, these people are desperate. They're desperate for control. And it's the entitlement. And that's what's happening to Yaweh right now, because we are right now in a systematic collapse. And people are still in denial about it. I gotta get some water. Sorry if it's really loud. We're in a systematic collapse because COVID gave all of us time to evaluate and go, hey, they're still out there. This is a big thing. This is an emergency, they're saying, and people are dying. How come they're not backing us up? And then you start seeing all the shady shit, and you're like, oh, this is how you motherfuckers really are, huh? We were all, and a lot of us knew this stuff before COVID. We were all conspiracy theorists. Trust me, nobody in my environment wanted to believe anything, or you're just wasting all your money on this organic food and fucking up your kids and not letting them go to a prom or public school system. No, my kids are cool. They're not blinded from any of this shit at all. Do you think that me, a very open-minded occultist mom, with tattoos, you think I'm going to have my kids be blinded and indoctrinated? Of course not. My kids are super fucking just like aware of this shit. I'm not saying woke. Fuck you and your words. They are aware of the system because they do their own research and they have their own opinions. We don't see eye to eye on everything, and I think that's healthy. I don't want them to think everything that I think is right. I want them to see what I believe and see if there's room for improvement, not out of ego though. That's how we evolve. But we have such entitlement, and even with the parental system in the Western world, right? Because I was a young parent, and I was a young parent that chose to be a young parent because I wanted a white picket fence, and I was in an environment where I could. I was a young mommy because I just had voids to fill and I didn't realize it. So I loved parenthood a lot, and it was my personality trait. I was a fucking rock and roll mom, and I studied all of these people and how they utilize their kids as accessories, and then they get pissed off when their kids start thinking for themselves and start wanting to do better than them. And that's when you get into the world of godly entitlement. And I am going to do everything in my power to completely tell my kids all about that system so they know that I can't rig it. Like, that's how I am as a parent. I care way too fucking much to do that shit. So I want people to understand that. I'm not perfect. I don't have all the answers, but I've been just thrown into this goddamn field of mayhem. And I'm like, all right, I got a stick and I got a rock. Let's see what we can do with these two. And you can do a lot with a stick and a rock. You can make a fucking weapon. You can make a fire. You can start marking, the places around with it. You can use it to mark so you can track back to where you want to go, or to track back where you're trying to find water. You know what I mean? There's a lot you can do with a stick and a rock. You really can. You can fucking launch that shit at somebody, whatever you got to do. But the point is we feel entitled in our society too we don't want to pick up a stick and a rock and make our do. We want somebody to make us those weapons and fight for our freedom. So I can bitch and complain about McDonald's fucking ice cream machine not being in service or whatever the hell people complain about. It's crazy to me. And I feel like that can lead people to psychosis too. So just be careful with that. Just disconnect, and it's okay to just bounce in and out of the matrix. And it's not to justify, oh, it's okay, just a little bit. I absolutely feel disgusted with myself when I say that. It's the reality that that's the way you can exist with this sort of shit without going completely insane. That's it. I can go get a Starbucks. Starbucks isn't even a thing in Australia because Starbucks has quality coffee and they have integrity, and they don't want shitty coffee here at all. So Starbucks doesn't do well. It's so funny because the most generic, like 7-Eleven coffee here is so amazing compared to like reasonable coffee back home. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm a chef and a bit of a coffee snob, and I know what's good, but here it's good, man. I wish I can just send everybody some coffee. But then my dark mind goes, well, what fucking child is having to harvest that shit? Because coffee plants don't have a high yield, by the way, because I wanted to grow some for personal. One plant's like one bag of coffee, like a kilo fucking of beans, and that's it. And it's like, so I just think about, oh fuck, man, this is so fucked. But you still should just enjoy your goddamn cup of coffee. And I'm very sorry for feeling like doom and gloom. This is just me being transparent with how my mind works, and also trying to figure out how to just pivot this shit. Because I've realized working with demons, and I realized having a deep dive in my spiritual path, and working on this gnosis for you guys for Kitchen Occultists. I'm sorry if I'm not trying to like clickbait. This is I have to learn how to do a lot of shit, and I've been like putting myself through school for this, and they're loving it. So I'm excited, but this is like just ripping my life apart and figuring out what all of these pieces actually represent, and then rebuilding it, like building a car, knowing exactly every nut and bolt and what function it has. That's working with demons. So, it's not that I take my life so serious. It's not that I feel like every little fucking thing that I do has some big meaning or purpose. It's just interesting to me. The synchronicities in my own life, in my own universe, and how they really can collect and add up without me overthinking it. And working with demons has taught me that. And when you learn that about yourself, you detach from entitlement, from the things that you feel entitled to that you don't realize, like convenience for us. And I'm not suggesting that we all need to live out in the wilderness with a fucking loincloth and a stick, you know. I just think that we need to have a little bit more fortitude and understand who we are as a species, because the more I'm out in nature and the more just with gardening alone, not even just doing other activities, the more I feel connected to myself. And it's not in this hippy dippy way. I feel good. I feel mental relief. I've got hundreds of plants, and we are in this suburban area outside of Brisbane, and it's really depressing at times because shit's just not how it used to be, and people are breaking down, and it just doesn't look as nice as it does. But we have paradise in our house because we've got the plants help. And it's not just a psychological thing, it's a biological need. It's a spiritual need that we need to be around nature. And we can still have balance. I still use plastic. I have plastic bottles because I have a child with autism that loves this brand of kale green juice. So we buy it for him because he really loves it, and it's a safe. So I just use the bottles. But a lot of people in the zero waste community with their sense of entitlement would be like, you should just fucking grow on your own. And I do, but you know what? There's a lot of obstacles. Okay? And he likes this one. I do make kale juice and carrot juice. I have a juicer. I'm a chef. My husband's a chef. Sometimes it's not about the fucking zero waste. Sometimes a child who has special needs and who does eat, he eats a really good range of food, and he communicates, he's doing great, really, really just likes a certain brand of fucking juice. And it's okay. You know what I mean? Like, we gotta just try to figure this out. That's my point. So we have all of these genres of entitlement, and that's the trickle-down effect. And because of that, everybody feels invalidated, and we're at war with ourselves. We're at war with each other. So the war god just gobble, 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 just takes all of it up. And that's what we are. This world is so fucking broken right now, and it's toxic, and it's screaming, and it's noisy. I am... First of all, I'm sorry if I talk about myself too much, but what the fuck am I supposed to do, you know? But I don't want to be a part of the system anymore. I don't feel afraid of it. I feel a bit jaded. I felt like I had to go away, break down, rebuild, and I come in and out of it, but I just don't feel like I'm there. I don't want it anymore. When I go to the shops to run errands or to go collect packages and stuff, I don't want to be there. I'm not interested in, oh, we should go stop here at this. I just see the bullshit so much clearer now. But what I do in exchange for that is these experiences that I have and these genuine things that I might buy or invest into mean so much more. Like, there's just planes everywhere. Buying a flying ointment from, a local witch here in Australia, and it was handmade, and it was a little note in it, and it just, that shit is us connecting and sharing our energy. And there's an equivalent exchange. I'm happy to pay extra. Or if she lived next door, I would be so happy, like, to trade her for stuff that I make, because I'm a maker. I'm a witch. I'm a witch that makes the energy, and not all witches do, and that's totally okay, too, because there's just so much divide with that because of entitlement. Everybody's entitled to indoctrinate each other for their own path now, and that's one thing that I hate to see where we are now in 2023. Just in general, just on a side note with entitlement in the witchcraft community, compared to, like, when YouTube first started, I was a part of the witchcraft community. Not just as a content creator, but in general, like, even if I didn't make content, I watched lots of other people's videos and read their blogs. And there was more conversation back then in the mid-2000s about perspective. And most of the entitlement and battle would come between, it was between us heathenistic pagans against the radical Christians that would go out of their way to fuck with people, right? Like old middle-aged men that just had nothing better to do. And now what I'm seeing is even within the subgenres of witchcraft, people are so combative. And some of them are coming from a place of defending themselves, But that can manifest into entitlement. You know what I mean? When you start winning arguments that are gotcha arguments, that starts to fortify and create almost this sort of like, metaphorical egregore of entitlement. Well, I've been there. I know what it's like to always be right, because a lot of the times I was right, because I can outsmart a lot of people, and I was able to in my environment, or then it came to a point where I thought I was able to, because I did so many times in certain, it's just we create these cages, and then we're at war with ourselves and war with each other. And right now we're at war with the system, and we're not realizing it. We are at war already. People are like, war, all these scare tactics. Everything's falling apart. News media outlets are falling apart. I don't know if you guys know who Tucker Carlson is. He's a Republican Fox News reporter that quit on grounds of actual real journalism, and I can respect that. I don't think I'll agree with many things with that gentleman. Maybe outside of fucking, guns and being self-sufficient, maybe. But he probably has a lot of views that I would disagree with. But if he respects my rights to be me, then I respect his rights to be him. That's what we should be doing as people. Not even just Americans, as people. As long as you're not fucking up me and trying to infringe onto me, and I'm not trying to infringe onto you, we should be able to go do our research with our lives and talk about it, so we can figure this out. But not a lot of people do. So I respected that, because I didn't really like that journalist before, because I don't like right-wing propaganda, you know what I mean? And I don't like left propaganda. I don't like any of it. I think it's all bullshit. And here's one thing, here's my entitlement. I feel entitled to say that I don't care about either side of an argument, because I'm okay with being hated by both sides. That's probably an issue that I should navigate. But when you get into demonology and you really get into it for the prospects of growth, you're going to start playing jujitsu with your psychology. They're going to start doing these intricate small maneuvers for you to pick out and to study with the detachment. So you don't become entitled and become thinking my life is so fucking important and I have to talk about that's what I feel like. Man, do people think that? Because I don't. It's just interesting, because I'm trying to figure this out. And I'm trying not to stress on it. And they tell me, Belial tells me, like, Four of Swords energy all the time, just relax. Like, I'm not even supposed to be stressing about shit. He tells me I'm supposed to just be relaxing and enjoying things. Like, I feel like I push things off a lot. I push out help a lot. I push out generosity a lot. I have always been very blessed to have people in my environment that give to me, that like to bring me things and gifts and make things, and it's always like, oh no, don't fucking do that, I'm a terrible mess. I like to be that person too. But he mentions Belial about blocking that out, and not only that, but other things, because I'm so paranoid to be myself that what if I become a monster or something, and you can balance that out. So I really believe that the real trickle-down effect, maybe metaphorically, maybe systematically, but I'm not really saying literally, is the Yaweh entitlement. Because all of us are screaming at each other and thinking we want to feel right because we're broken down. And I just really wonder how broken down God is. The boss that's supposed to be in charge. Because I don't always see a lot of evolvement in that spectrum. So anyways, I'm going to leave it at that for this episode. And I hope I didn't ramble too much. But thank you for tuning in. And if you have any feedback or questions, leave your comments below, like and subscribe. And thank you so much for supporting the Rook podcast. I'll see you next episode.